In 1964, the United States government made a decision that would silently transform America's monetary system forever. A decision so profound that its ripple effects continue to shape your financial reality today, whether you realize it or not. They told you it was about a coin shortage. They said silver was becoming too scarce. But what if I told you that the elimination of silver from American coinage wasn't about shortage at all, but about one of the greatest wealth transfers in American history? By the end of this investigation, you'll understand why the decision to remove silver from our coins might be one of the most brilliantly orchestrated financial maneuvers ever executed against the American public. The story begins in the America of the early 1960s, a nation at the height of its economic power. The dollar was king, backed by the largest gold reserves in the world and a monetary system that had served Americans since the founding of the Republic. Every time you reached into your pocket for a dime, quarter, or half dollar, you held a piece of real money, 90% silver, just as Americans had for generations. These weren't mere tokens or symbols of wealth. They were wealth, tangible, physical, and independent of any government's promise. Then suddenly, around 1963, a curious problem emerged. Coin shortages began appearing across the nation. Businesses complained they couldn't make change. Banks reported dwindling supplies of coins. The official explanation came swiftly from Washington. Government spokesman, archival. The United States is experiencing a critical shortage of coins due to increased commercial demand and unfortunate hoarding by collectors and speculators. The narrative was simple and believable. America's booming economy needed more coins than the mint could produce. Collectors were removing too many coins from circulation, and rising industrial demand for silver was straining supplies. The solution came on July 23, 1965, when President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Coinage Act of 1965, eliminating silver from dimes and quarters completely, while reducing it in half dollars from 90% to 40%. President Johnson said that, "If anybody has any idea of hoarding our silver coins, let me say this. Treasury has a lot of silver on hand, and it can be, and it will be used to keep the price of silver in line with its value in our present silver coin. There will be no profit in holding them out of circulation for the value of their silver content." The government assured Americans that the new clad coins would circulate alongside the silver ones indefinitely. Nothing would change. Business as usual. But something very different happened. Within months, silver coins began disappearing from circulation. By 1968, finding a pre-1965 silver coin in your change was becoming rare. By 1970, they were gone entirely. The official explanation had a fatal flaw. If the problem was truly just a shortage of physical coins, why didn't the silver coins continue to circulate alongside the new clad ones as promised? To understand what really happened, we need to look beyond the official narrative to something economists call Gresham's Law. Gresham's Law states that bad money drives out good. When two forms of money with the same face value but different intrinsic values circulate together, people will spend the less valuable money and hoard the more valuable. It's not a theory, it's human nature. The government officials who crafted the Coinage Act of 1965 were not fools. They understood Gresham's Law perfectly well. They knew that once the new copper-nickel sandwich coins entered circulation, Americans would quickly recognize the difference and save the silver coins. By 1964, silver was trading around $1.29 per ounce, the price at which the Treasury had been selling it for decades. But here's the critical point. At just $1.38 per ounce, the silver in a dollar's worth of coins would be worth more as metal than as money. The government was desperately trying to keep silver prices below this tipping point. Why? Because once crossed, rational Americans would begin removing silver coins from circulation en masse, not because they were collectors or hoarders, but because they were making a sound financial decision. To suppress the price, the Treasury had been selling silver from government stockpiles, bleeding away America's strategic reserves to maintain the illusion that silver and paper dollars were equivalent. By 1964, these reserves were dangerously depleted, so the real crisis wasn't a shortage of coins. It was the imminent collapse of silver price suppression. If that happened, not only would coins disappear, but something far more threatening to government power would occur. Americans would witness, in real time, the debasement of their currency. Remember, at this time, Americans could still redeem silver certificates, a type of dollar bill for physical silver at the Treasury. This was one of the last connections between our paper money and anything of real value. In March 1964, something remarkable happened. Word spread that the Treasury might stop redeeming silver dollars. In many photographed scenes, citizens showed up with wheelbarrows, armed guards, and even armored cars to haul away silver before it was too late. On March 25, 1964, it happened. The Treasury announced it would no longer redeem silver certificates with silver dollars, but even then Americans could still redeem them for silver bullion, for now. Meanwhile, another event would accelerate the crisis. After President Kennedy's assassination in November 1963, the government announced a new half-dollar bearing his image. When 26 million Kennedy half-dollars were released in March 1964, Americans hoarded them immediately, not primarily as investments, but as mementos of their fallen president. The emotional attachment to these coins removed them from circulation instantly. This wasn't part of the plan. The government had just produced millions of coins that would never serve their intended purpose of commerce. By mid-1964, the situation was critical. The money supply was threatened. Public awareness of silver's true value was growing. And most alarming to those in power, Americans were beginning to question the very nature of their currency. But what if this crisis, this perfect storm of silver prices, coin shortages, and public awakening, presented an extraordinary opportunity for those who controlled the monetary system? What if the removal of silver from coins wasn't a reluctant response to an unexpected problem, but the execution of a long-prepared plan? To understand the true significance of demonetizing silver, we need to go back to 1913 and the creation of the Federal Reserve System. For the first time, America's money supply was controlled by a private banking cartel with extraordinary government privileges. Under this system, money is primarily created not by government printing, but by banks making loans. When you get a mortgage or credit card, the bank isn't lending existing money. It's creating new money out of thin air. This gives tremendous power to those who control this system. But there was a problem for the banking system. As long as physical silver remained in the coinage, there was a limit to how much they could expand the money supply. Americans had a physical benchmark against which to measure the value of their dollars. Each silver dime, quarter, and half-dollar was a tiny restraint on the banking system's power to create unlimited currency. By the early 1960s, the economic ambitions of both bankers and politicians were being constrained by silver's presence in the monetary system. The Vietnam War was escalating, requiring massive funding. President Johnson's Great Society programs demanded unprecedented government spending. The monetary leash needed to be removed. Internal Federal Reserve memos from this period reveal a clear understanding that removing silver from coinage would be a critical step toward unlimited monetary expansion. This wasn't a conspiracy, it was policy. The coin shortage crisis provided the perfect cover. While Americans focused on the practical problem of having enough coins for commerce, a profound transformation of the entire monetary system was underway. The real purpose of the Coinage Act of 1965 wasn't to solve a temporary shortage, it was to sever one of the last connections between America's money and physical reality. It was preparation for something even bigger. Just 6 years later, in 1971, President Nixon would complete the process by ending the convertibility of dollars to gold for foreign governments, the final step in transforming the dollar into pure fiat currency, backed by nothing but government decree. So when President Johnson signed the Coinage Act in 1965, he wasn't just addressing a coin shortage, he was executing one of the most significant changes to America's monetary system in history, with almost no public understanding of what was really happening. The effects were exactly as the architects of this plan intended. With silver removed from the coinage and the gold window soon to close, there were no more natural restraints on money creation. The result? An explosion in the money supply and the purchasing power of the dollar in free fall. Since 1965, the dollar has lost over 97% of its purchasing power. What cost $1 in 1965 now costs more than $30. This isn't an accident or an unfortunate side effect. It's the inevitable result of a monetary system freed from the discipline of precious metals. But the inflation hasn't been equal across all assets or all people. While everyday items like food, housing, and education have skyrocketed in cost, financial assets have concentrated in fewer hands. The wealth gap in America has exploded since silver was removed from our coinage. With no restraint on money creation, the financial system has been rescued from its own excesses repeatedly through massive injections of new currency. Each crisis, the dot-com bubble, the 2008 financial crisis, the COVID response, has led to exponential increases in the money supply, primarily benefiting those closest to the financial system. Meanwhile, ordinary Americans who save in dollars watch their purchasing power evaporate year after year. The elimination of silver from coinage wasn't just a technical change to solve a shortage. It was the removal of the average person's access to inflation-proof money. Consider this remarkable fact. A 1964 silver quarter, based on its silver content, is worth about $5 today. A modern quarter will still only buy you a quarter's worth of goods. Which one protected its owner's purchasing power? The answer is obvious. The modern financial system requires constant debasement of the currency to function. Government debts can never be repaid in real terms. They can only be inflated away. This system would have been impossible to maintain if Americans still used silver coins that couldn't be devalued by decree. What happened in 1965 wasn't just a change in our coinage. It was the installation of the most effective wealth extraction system in history. When new currency is created, it doesn't affect all prices simultaneously. Those who receive the new money first, banks, financial institutions, and large corporations, can spend it before prices rise. By the time this new money reaches ordinary workers and savers, inflation has already eroded its purchasing power. This creates a continuous transfer of wealth from the bottom to the top, all without a single tax being raised or a single gun being drawn. When they took the silver out of our coins, they weren't just changing their composition. They were removing your ability to opt out of the system. With silver coins, Americans had a choice, a form of money the government couldn't debase. After 1965, that choice was gone. The architects of this plan understood something profound about human psychology. Most people don't think deeply about their money. They accept what they're given and focus on their daily lives. By maintaining the same size, color, and denominations of the coins, most Americans barely noticed the fundamental change. The visual similarity masked a revolution in what money meant in America. One coin contained real intrinsic value that had served as money for thousands of years. The other was merely a token, its value entirely dependent on government decree. And here's the most uncomfortable truth. This system could not function any other way. The modern financial world, with its massive government spending, consumer debt, and asset bubbles, cannot coexist with honest money. The removal of silver from our coinage wasn't a response to circumstances. It was a prerequisite for the economic system we now live under. Despite the government's assurances that silver coins would continue to circulate alongside the new clad versions, the American people understood reality better than the official narrative suggested. Within a few short years, virtually all silver coins had vanished from circulation. By 1970, the Treasury had essentially run out of silver, and prices broke free from the artificial $1.29 per ounce level the government had maintained for decades. The price of silver would eventually reach nearly $50 per ounce by 1980. Those who recognized what was happening and saved their silver coins saw the value of their holdings increase dramatically. A single bag of $1,000 face value pre-1965 coins that could be purchased for $1,000 in 1964 would be worth over $22,000 in silver content alone today. The demonetization of silver set the stage for President Nixon's final blow to sound, money, the closing of the gold window in 1971. From that point forward, the U.S. dollar was not convertible to anything of intrinsic value. For the first time in human history, all world currencies were simultaneously pure fiat money, backed by nothing but government promises. With all restraints removed, global debt has exploded to levels that would have been unimaginable in the era of silver and gold money. This debt can never be repaid in real terms. It can only be serviced through the creation of ever more currency, leading to the continued devaluation of all fiat money. Since the 2008 financial crisis, central banks worldwide have created trillions in new currency to prevent the debt-based financial system from collapsing. Each intervention requires a larger response than the last, suggesting the system's fundamental instability. Ironically, the government's attempt to blame collectors for the coin shortage led to another provision in the Coinage Act of 1965, the through temporary removal of mint marks. Officials believed that without mint marks indicating where a coin was produced, collectors would lose interest in hoarding them. This minor detail reveals something profound about the government's mindset. Rather than acknowledging the real economic forces at work, they focused on collectors as scapegoats, a tiny factor in a much larger monetary transformation. It's a pattern we still see today when officials blame inflation on greedy corporations or supply chain issues rather than monetary policy. The government that once eliminated silver from circulation now produces pure silver coins for collectors and investors, the American Silver Eagle program. But these coins are not meant for circulation. They're priced far above their face value, ensuring they remain commodities rather than money. The removal of silver from our coinage represents something deeper than just a change in metal content. For thousands of years, across virtually all civilizations, precious metals served as money because of their intrinsic properties. They couldn't be created out of thin air. They were durable, divisible, consistent, and recognized universally. When silver was removed from our everyday transactions, we lost more than just the metal itself. We lost a critical check on government and banking power. We lost money that derived its value from natural scarcity rather than artificial restrictions. We lost financial sovereignty. Today, the vast majority of transactions don't involve physical currency at all. Money has been almost entirely digitized, existing primarily as numbers in computer systems controlled by banks and government authorities. This transition began with the seemingly small step of removing silver from our coins. Throughout history, every experiment with unbacked paper money has ended the same way, with the eventual destruction of the currency through overissuance. The US dollar has lasted longer than most, but the exponential increase in money creation suggests it won't be the exception to this rule. Since the silver was removed from our coins, hard assets, real estate, precious metals, art, collectibles have dramatically outperformed cash savings. This isn't a coincidence. It's the predictable result of a monetary system designed to encourage consumption and debt while punishing saving and self-reliance. The widening wealth gap created by this monetary system drives much of our current social and political division. Yet few recognize that the root cause lies in how our money works, a topic rarely discussed in mainstream political debate. That last silver dime, minted in 1964, represents more than just a collector's item or an investment. It's a tangible reminder of what money once was and what it was meant to be, a store of value that couldn't be manipulated by government decree or banking policy. The official story that silver was removed due to shortages and rising industrial demand contains elements of truth, but it obscures the deeper reality that this change was a necessary step in transforming our entire economic system. The next time you hold a pre-1965 silver coin, consider what you're really holding. One of the last pieces of honest money that circulated freely in America. A form of money that didn't require faith in government promises or banking integrity. A form of money that has outlasted countless empires, governments, and currencies throughout human history. In 1964, without public debate or widespread understanding, Americans lost something profound, their direct connection to a monetary system based on natural scarcity rather than artificial limitation. The consequences of this transformation continue to shape our economy, our politics, and our society in ways few recognize, but everyone experiences. Understanding the real reason silver was removed from our coins isn't just about economic history. It's about recognizing how fundamental changes to our monetary system can silently transform the relationship between citizens and the state, between savers and consumers, between reality and illusion. The question now is, how long can a monetary system based entirely on faith and decree continue? And what will replace it when that faith inevitably falters?